Okay, you want to start here?
Yeah.
And I'll do that. And you just do that.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Ainsley.
Oh, hi everyone, my name is Ainsley Gatt and I'm a third year PhD candidate. The paper I'm presenting is based on the early career of the British-born New York-based artist Cecily Brown and titled, "Is there really equality in the artwork, or is history repeating itself?" Hopefully this paper will give an insight into why Cecily is such an important contemporary artist. However, before I begin, I'd like to advise that my slideshow contains sexually graphic artworks, and if it's not for you, you may want to pass on this presentation. Okay. Okay. Where am I? Sorry, this is travelling a bit fast for me. I'm going back. Okay, so I don't really want it to flick through, I want to do it myself, but anyway, we'll see how we go. Cecily Brown is one of the few living female painters whose artworks sell at prices over $1 million US at art auctions, and this was her first. In 2018, her art set a new record with her 1999 painting Suddenly Last Summer that sold at Sotheby's, New York for $6.7 million. At the time, her painting became the second most expensive artwork for a living female artist to sell at auction. As a side note, the most expensive artwork in this category is accredited to British painter Jenny Saville with her 1992 painting Propped, fetching just shy of $12.5 million at Sotheby's London, also selling in 2018. Brown's financial and institutional success, as to date, well, there has been no real attempt to thoroughly analyse the basis of and to assess whether her breakthrough in the industry reflected a shift in the art world's appetite for distinctly female or preferably feminist works of art, and if that shift represents progress towards gender equality. I just want to pause that a little bit because it's just going too fast for me. Is there a way I can do this on my own?
I wonder if, you know, the only way you can do that is probably doing like that. And but you can't. It's,
that one.
Yeah. There is the probably animation. Yeah, let's see, animation or slideshow.
Anyway, I'll just use timings. Play narration, don't play narration.
Don't play narration. Okay, let's hope this will work. Yeah.
Okay, so Brown's professional career began with two enormously successful solo exhibitions in New York in the late 90s. In a review by the New York Times art critic Ken Johnson reported Brown's art as denoting porn abstract expressionism, a mix of Duquesne-esque gesturalism and graphic representation of sexual imagery with an emphasis on the genitalia. The critics were swift to label Brown as one of art's bad girls. Sorry, I'm one behind. Crooning. Her art they considered as mutually provocative and innovative, flipping the body politics of identity and desire and subverting the objectifying nature of the male gaze in art history that empowers heterosexual men and sexualises women. Comparatively, her paintings were part of a resurgent trend in the late 90s of a new generation of female painters depicting visual narrative with sexually graphic content as depicted through the female gaze. It is reasonable to say that Brown's art draws from four art world tropes: sexualised imagery, the essence of the original New York abstract expressionist painters of the 40s and 50s, arguably the most masculine genre in art history itself, and painting, which through the 90s the art academies considered dead. In this paper, I contemplate that society's attitude towards art has not been as progressive in terms of female equality as one would think, and that to become one of the world's leading female contemporary artists, Brown looked to the past and represented what had been canonical to art's history. Or quoting the Guerrilla Girls' words, "Women still have to be naked to get into the Met Museum." Feminism, art historian Griselda Pollock argues, is a political commitment to women and to the changes that women desire for themselves and for the world. This being said, feminism is diverse in its theory as it is in its political and social position. In a 1999 New York Times article, Cecily Brown, born in 1969, declares that women of her generation were born feminists, growing up in the Madonna School of Feminism. Pop icon Madonna was quickly branded by the media as music's bad girl, a term commonly used in high school playgrounds to represent female stereotypes who flaunt their sexuality. These girls have always been perceived as bad. This constructed identity is, of course, one among many of diverse female identities. More importantly, it is different when the bad woman identity is adopted by a young white woman from a privileged background who has more leverage in being bad in terms of the possible consequences. Poor bad girls may lose their jobs. Non-white bad girls may go to jail. Regardless, true gender equality comes with the right to misbehave, as many male artists have been known to do. In Brown's circumstance, she is branded arts bad girl because her sexually graphic paintings fit this persona. The schoolgirl slut has been elevated into the realm of art and high aesthetics. However, as stated earlier, Brown was not the first artist to be branded with the bad girl title. A group of New York female artists that rose to prominence in the 70s were the first to create and exhibit art with graphic sexual content from female realities of sexual expression and liberation. Among them were artists Betty Tompkins, Carol Sheeman and Marilyn Minter. Mainstream media penned these artists as the first wave of bad girls. However, this era of bad girls artists was not as progressive with their genre as the late 90s collective. The main difference between the 70s bad girls and those of the 90s is the critical reception the latter received and with the exhibitions at leading institutions. One could say it took Madonna to make bad girls mainstream. Like all involved in the capitalist play of commercial art critics consciously or unconsciously monopolise the brand of the bad girl persona, packaging and creating this narrative of artists and their artworks for economic commodification. Comparable to Brown's critics' attention, her paintings appeared radical to a new generation of consumers during the late 90s due to her depiction of bold sexuality and the adoption of lowbrow themes aligned with popular culture signifiers. In addition, her oeuvre was reactionary as she stylistically adopts the male gaze conventions by following the style of the abstract expressionist movement. The bad girl persona might be an act of feminism asserting the artist's sexual agency, but is her art as progressive in terms of feminism as it appears to be? Do female artists need to paint sexual narratives just to be noticed? Nevertheless, galleries and art fairs in New York were beginning to exhibit, and excited art punters began to collect the art of Brown and others of this new generation of painters. In a similar fashion to the feminist movement, art movements go through different ways of interpretations of what it means to be an artist. During the 50s, the New York abstract expressionist artists' rise and consequent fame were being supported by middle-class collectors excited by the works of de Kooning, Pollock and Motherwell, to name a few. By the 60s, these artists and their works were championed by government cultural agencies as apolitical, which in itself was a political necessity, enabling the art to be put to political use as American cultural propaganda. Accordingly, America's new art became a signifier to represent a nation of openness to creative freedom, individuality and consumerism, adding to the ideology of a great American dream. As a result, the abstract expressionist artist's artistic genius, white, male and heterosexual, dominated the Western art world. Jumping forward a couple of decades, Cecily Brown during the 80s was still at art college, living in London and training as a figurative painter. She was acutely aware of the British Art College's aversion towards painting due to the recent sensationalism of UK's young British artists, the YBAs. In an article Brown wrote for Flash Art, she declared that if one was painting, then it was assumed that it was out of ignorance or from the stubborn refusal to notice that the world had changed. By the mid-90s, Brown was living in New York, As a contemporary feminist woman, her self-efficacy led her to be part of a fresh new generation of artists who emerged from art school infatuated with paint and made their mark in the New York scene. Artist journalist Phoebe Hoban wrote that by Whitney Biennale, followed by MoMA in '97, and after years of critical disinterest and commercial decline, painting was finally back in play. The Whitney featured artist Damien Loeb, a contemporary realist painter whose work incorporates collected images from MTV movies, advertising and fashion. Inka Eisenhigh paints carefully rendered enigmatic cartoon-like features resembling Walt Disney images. Lisa Yukovaj creating painterly psychosexual dramas, and Rita Ackerman, who paints contemporary Lolitas and was drawing on the darkest aspects of adolescent life. In the Dolce Vita years of the late 90s, Brown and these artists were praised for reinventing painting. The new art is nothing if not eclectic, writes Hoban. Its only common characteristic seems to be its total lack of irony, its unabashed embrace of popular culture, and the fact that most of it is based on secondary source material. Excuse me. This new breed of artists unashamedly connect their art to New York's late 90s zeitgeist, drawing on cultural signifiers such as Sex and the City, Friends, Jennifer Lopez, hip-hop, AIDS, and the gentrification of New York, with the return of the middle and the upper class and the opening of museums and art galleries in Manhattan. During these years, Brown was very much in step with this gentrified New York City world. Brown's first New York solo exhibition was at Deitch Project in Soho in February 1997. This was also Jeffrey Deitch's first painting show in his gallery, renowned for its performance in neo-conceptual art. Vanessa Beecroft launched Deitch Project a year earlier with an exhibition of performance work featuring a group of women posing in lingerie. Beecroft's exhibition of near-naked women critiquing the female subject and gender stereotypes was a radical launchpad for the direction of future exhibitions, including that of notable artist Joycelyn Taylor with films of her walking naked through New York, Beth B's portrait photographs of vaginas, and Cecily Brown's group erotic imagery. These exhibitions related to sexualised women in various guises can be acknowledged as either a celebration of the female gaze or a subtle exploitation by Dutch projects packaged as feminism. Women using other women's bodies to make money where the male gaze is having fun without any responsibility. Within the capitalist system of commercial galleries, these artists and actors' sexual freedoms are commoditised. Once a commercial exchange transpires, the creator loses control of the narrative. The artwork's owner, predominantly male, becomes the holder of the gaze and the interpretation of the artwork. This situation presents gender inequality and begs the question, how much of this art and performance is about sexual freedom and fun? If male and female bodies were represented, the art would create more of an even platform of gender equality, as with Brown's paintings. The road to gender equality in the arts has been a long one. Throughout art history, female artists who found fame and financial success had to be supported commercially by their male role models, typically their fathers. In a similar fashion, Brown was introduced to the art dealer Jeffrey Deitch by her father, the famous British art critic David Sylvester. After initial visit to Brown's Tribeca, New York studio, Deitch offered her an exhibition. He described her art as extraordinary works inspired by some strange combination of Victorian fairy paintings and de Kooning. The uniqueness of her work became apparent to the public in her first exhibition, Spectacle at Deitch, featuring 6 paintings of fluffy bunnies engaged in spectorial group sex. In a conversation with Deitch, he commented that people visiting the gallery would stand in front of her art looking at each work for ages. He had never seen anything like it. However, the rabbit motif had been employed throughout art history, notably by Bosch, Dürer, Lansky, Boys and Miro. Brown's bunnies are represented as human substitutes, participating in feverish orgies that provoke comparisons to the illustrations of Beatrix Potter's Peter Rabbit and the adult magazine Playboy, or the fantasy of Hugh Hefner's Playboy bunnies. New York art critic Jerry Solz reviewed an exhibition of Brown's that was exhibiting concurrently with that at Deitch that continued with the bunny as her motive. He mused that the dark side of fantasy played out with childlike colours in Brown's paintings with soft pinks, baby blues and fluorescent greens. Such colour chords are evident in her 1996 work, Bunny Gangbang. So it continues expressing Brown's skill for compressed composition and a weird haunty eroticism in her ambiguous space paintings. From this early stage in her career, her critics engaged with her artistic development as she began to push the boundaries of painterly exoticism. Her artwork addressed complex adult subjects, with the actors being neither gender nor human specific. Thus, by using animals instead of human figures, these ambiguous images allowed the viewer to engage with her artwork's content in a less binary approach regarding gender and politics. In addition, in Brown's painting, the phrase "fucking like rabbits" introduces a verbal element to the art that more abstract words usually canonically eschew. Within high culture, Brown's untitled 1996 could easily have borrowed the spacing of her bunnies and colour chords from Gauguin's Still Life with Three Puppies from 1888. No, we're not that one, the next one. I'm one behind, sorry. There we go. Her crowds of rabbits, the painting of crowd scenes, distinguishes the sexuality of these creatures from the singular female faun of de Kooning. Crowd painting is a feature of traditional history painting in which composition is determined not by flat shapes on the picture surface, as Clement Greenberg insists on, but the arrangement of human bodies so that they articulate a story within the picture space, as in Alberti's Historia. In the fashion of Historia painting, narrative painting that emerged in the 15th century Italy combined a mix of old, young, maidens, women, youth, boys, fowl, small dogs, bird, horses, sheep, landscapes and other small things, similar things, and produced the effect of elevating one's mind. Thus, in Brown's case, even if the story is incoherent or predicated mainly on the general events of sex and violence, we can see these elements in her painting, Untitled 99, which evokes Goya's nightmarish paintings and scenes from Peter Bruegel the Elder's Dalgret in 1562, on the right one. Convincingly, an anachronistic element in Brown's painting is her connection with the old master tradition. Part of the experience of Brown's painting involves discovering that we can see her knowledge in art history and in turn reinforces her place in art's story. The New York Museum of Modern Art, MoMA, and British advertising baron Charles Saatchi discovered Brown's art appeal in her inaugural exhibition and purchased her paintings. By doing so, she launched her career. During the 80s and 90s, Charles Saatchi was to contemporary art comparable to the Medici family to the Renaissance art. As a mega collector famous for collecting radical sensationalism, conceptual and installational art of the YBAs, Saatchi had the Midas touch, launching many artists' careers into stardom. Once again, we see that a male collector approved of Brown as a worthy artist within the art establishment and was so required for her career development. The impact Brown's paintings had on important collectors, in conjunction with the prestige of exhibiting in MoMA Vertical Painting Show of 97-98, is regarded as a turning point that signified painting as back in fashion. In April the following year, Brown held her second solo at Dutch Projects titled High Society. In contrast to her previous show, the sex cravings of human form replaced Brown's sex-craved bunnies. Her images explored the relationship between flesh and paint, with mannerisms reminiscent of Lucien Freud's fleshy bodies and the painterly distortions of Francis Bacon, as seen in her 1998 painting Guys and Dolls. This exhibition is where her painterly style first embraced the abstract expressionist formalism that from here on defined her oeuvre. Art critic Eleanor Hartley, reviewing her exhibition, profoundly claims that whatever one thinks, one can't be denied that Brown can actually paint. Hartley clarifies her statement by defining the formalism of Brown's painting, the masterly application of her brushstrokes and the originality of her colour chords, her connection to painters in art history and her devouring force of sexuality in her compositions and subject matter that draw in the audience. Brown explains her paintings draw on the spaces opened up by the abstract expressionism. In addition, she says that with the death of Francis Bacon in 1992, she finds it easy to make paintings which use the only subjects worth painting, birth, copulation and death. Brown's gestural mark makings of fleshy orgies depict masturbating, erect and penetrating penises, vaginas and other body parts in a feverish play of paint and tension oscillating between figuration and abstraction. It may be that Brown's subject matter, depicting female sexuality, followed the trajectory pointed by the Guerrilla Girls that female artists' chances of career success are dependent on depicting sexualised female forms. The dominant gaze of Brown's paintings can be observed as ambiguous, not conforming with the sexual and social power of the male gaze. There are as many male appendages as there are female appendages in the paintings. Even so, the sexual imagery is masculine. It is brutal and graphic rather than tender and suggestive. Painting, Brown comments, is a metaphor for sex. It is brutal and tender and everything at once. She reflects on these paintings as stations of desire, the act of female and male erotic pleasure. Through her art, Brown becomes the maker of meaning, not the bearer of meaning, flipping the symbolic order of the woman depicted as patriarchal cultural signifiers in paintings. Art critic Barry Schwartzby describes the impulsive and energetic brushwork of her painting in this exhibition, full of figurative reminiscence, as it often was with a first generation of abstract expressionists. Schwartzby review identifies the irony that has led to the artist to title her painting after movie musicals, as with On the Town or Guys and Dolls. Her orgy of high society is played out in this Baroque theatre of painting, with the actors of her production arranged in composition similar to that of Rubens. Brown's critics have fashioned her reputation as a masterful painter with a unique painting style from the early stages of her professional career. This high society exhibition of 8 large abstract, erotic, fleshy, penetrating action paintings completely sold out. In 1999, Brown's world reached a new height when mega dealer Gary Gagosian poached her to exhibit in his Beverly Hills Gagosian Gallery. In an interview with Hoban, Brown comments that Larry didn't offer her so much money that she always enjoyed the space. Was Brown willing to undermine the feminist quest for pay parity for the benefit of being supported by a male patron and joining the stable at Gagosian Gallery? Once again, the situation can also be read as anti-feminist, i.e. adopting the persona of a bad girl under the tutorage of a powerful man in a financial relationship. Larry Gagosian is the world's biggest and most influential art dealer. In 1980, he opened his first of many galleries in Los Angeles. By 1999, his gallery empire expanded with premises in Beverly Hills and 2 in New York, exhibiting Picasso, Miro, de Kooning, Pollock, Newman, Johns, Warhol, Golden, Sierra and Prince, just to name a few. Over 3 decades, Cecily Brown's career had progressed to a position that set her future success. In defiance of the art world's patriarchal hallmarks, Brown has successfully taken advantage of visual cues available to her to stay competitive. Consequently, she has created a new painting aesthetic that combines her sexual narrative with a pastiche of abstract expressionism, creating a genre of sexual abstract expressionism and an instantly recognisable signature style. Brown's unique painterly style embeds her in an integral part of American art history. Furthermore, her vanguardism and adoption of formalism from European art history to her art practice were strategic in keeping her work relevant in art history. The formalism of Brown's work, combined with social concerns and identity contemporaneously, was of equal significance to the success of Brown's practice. The media branding her as art's bad girl in fashion magazine features, arts journals and mainstream press positioned her paintings as the new must-have fashion. However, her frequent feature appearances in periodicals may have exaggerated the reality of the art world's equal opportunities. Similarly, positioning Brown as an example of a feminist artist, who made a dent in the patriarchal art market is a constructed narrative that is much more complex and sometimes contradictory. Nevertheless, by examining Brown's early career and social conditions that influenced the art world leading up to the end of the 20th century, we can ascertain that notwithstanding the obstacles for women succeeding in the art world, Brown could navigate a career path toward institutional and financial success. I suggest that there has been progress towards gender equality in the arts, but there is still a long way to go. In summary, Brown's practice informs us that feminist art can achieve consequential levels of success within a system that celebrates patriarchal values. Thank you.